There's a whole lot of gaslighting going on, and we've become kind of immune to it. We like calling it out. And I'm not going to fall for it when it comes from Johanna Bender, a King County Superior Court judge. What's the one rule about whether or not I recognize someone's name? What does that mean if I recognize a judge's name?
It's not good.
It's never good. It has never, ever, ever, ever been good. I've never said, oh, that's a good judge. It's always, oh, I remember her. Oh, I remember what he did. That's always the case. And when I saw David Rose over at Fox 13 take on Judge Johanna Bender, I said, I know that name. In fact, I even know that face. That's a double whammy of, oh, it's not good. Oh, no, it isn't. You see, she decided to lash out at the media for criticizing her reckless decisions. Decisions that often lead to our communities being less safe. And her comments came after she offered sympathy to the family of an accused murderer, not to the victim's grieving family, but to the family, the mother of an accused murderer. Now, this has everything to do with the case of Kayshawn Jimerson, 20 years old. We talked about this a few weeks ago. According to the Renton PD, as well as the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, Jimerson attacked 65-year-old military veteran Michael Gray from behind with a broomstick before then fatally stabbing him twice with a kitchen knife. That's the allegation. So he gets put in front of a judge named Michelle Gelson. This was a first appearance hearing. And the prosecutor said, this guy's clearly a threat. He was found with the murder weapon. There are witnesses. We see him on surveillance film at the start of this, clearly attacking, being the aggressor. He is dangerous. We request bail at $2 million. And the judge was all like, meh, this is King County. It's going to be $50,000. And only having to put 10% up to post bail. That's what he or presumably his family did. And he was out of jail within, I think it was 27 hours. And so a few days later, he ends up getting charged with second-degree murder. The surveillance footage at that point was presented to the court. And now in front of Judge Johanna Bender, again, the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office said, please, this has to be a $2 million bail case. He is dangerous. And she was all like, meh. Now, at least did give $500,000 for bail. So we will give her that. But still a lot less than $2 million. And $2 million sends a message to the community and to the victims' families. But she didn't want to send that message. But before that ruling, before that decision, the suspect's mother stood up and said, hey, Judge, I request that you bar the media from filming my son, the accused murderer, in this courtroom because I fear for vigilante justice. Someone's going to find him and do to him what he's accused of doing to the 65-year-old military vet turned handyman that apparently everyone in the community loved. Now, she decided ultimately against that decision, arguing, at least in part, because the surveillance footage is already out there. In fact, I posted the surveillance footage on my Twitter account. But listen to what she says here.
This hearing isn't about me, but I will share with you that I often get death threats.
So it is about you. This isn't about me, but let me talk about myself for a minute.
Based on the decisions that I make, which is equally frustrating to me because I'm trying to do my job, and it should not be the responsibility of any member of the public to threaten my life because I am trying to uphold the law. So I am very empathetic to the situation that the family finds themselves in, having experienced it myself. And I understand personally how very frightening and disrupting it is, all the more so when you are also navigating this incredibly traumatic time in your family.
Oh, I'm sorry. Talk about next level gaslighting. It's very obviously inappropriate and illegal to send death threats to a judge because she makes poor decisions. We know that. The irony is that those accused of far worse crimes than sending death threats in an email get the very sympathy Judge Bender is seeking from the public upon us finding out that she gets death threats. She's asking for sympathy when she offers very little to none to the victims, but all to the bad guys. So, I do view her as a bad guy here, but she has more to say.
I'm just doing my job. You're dealing with a crisis. There's a huge difference. And
just real quickly, you might want to I know it's crazy, maybe just throw in and by the way, I also care about the grieving family. I mean, there was a victim here who was stabbed to death, and they're actually going through a crisis, not the mom of the accused,
One for which I am very empathetic. I will also take this opportunity to editorialize that I hope that the press continues to take seriously their obligation to tell the stories of what happens in our courtroom in a fair and unbiased way, and takes every reasonable editorial action to not stir up public sentiment for revenge.
The absolute audacity of this judge. She's not, quote unquote, just doing her job. That's not what she's doing. She's actively failing at it. She's doing the opposite. You see, her bias is glaring when she goes easy on violent offenders. And what she's doing here by framing the criticism from the media of her going easy on criminals and suspects, what she's doing is trying to manipulate us into giving her a pass, not actually criticizing her. Because obviously none of us want to inspire someone to send her a death threat. I certainly don't want to do that. And what she hopes, I think, is like, man, I better not say anything because it might inspire someone to send her a death threat. All you've done, Johanna Bender, is remind me that you haven't been criticized enough for your very long and very alarming history in which you treat the suspects as if they're the victims, all while seeming to forget there are actual victims in the cases that appear in front of you. For example, a man was accused of shooting 3 times, a 65-year-old grandmother right in front of her 10-year-old grandkid, her granddaughter, at an ATM in Covington. This happened back in July. The bail was set at just $50,000, which, as the victim pointed out, is a number that far surpasses what she's going to have to pay in medical bills just to get treated for the 3 gunshot wounds that she was lucky enough to survive. She spoke at the time to Fox 13.
I still have a lot of pain. I grunt and groan a lot when I'm moving and getting up and getting down. And she's always afraid
Granddaughter.
that I've fallen or that I'm hurt more. And she's like, what's wrong? What can I do? She shouldn't have to be carrying that weight. She's not even 11 years old yet.
See, those are the victims, not the dude who was accused. They were the ones who should have been treated with respect, not the bad guy who you lower bail to $50,000. Now, months before this, Judge Bender lowered the bail from $1 million to $20,000 for an accused white supremacist who was allegedly involved in dumping the bodies of the 2 murder victims. Okay? Again, from Fox 13, here are the prosecutors asking for $1 million bail.
The moving of 2 dead bodies after those individuals were brutally murdered, and his assisting in concealing that evidence. This was an incredibly violent act.
Apparently not violent enough for Johanna Bender.
There's no allegation of violent behavior in this case. Without relying on $1 million of bail, which I agree is excessive in light of the nature of the allegations and the history. I'm going to set bail in the amount of $20,000 cash or bond.
You can even hear in the background someone say, Jesus, oh my God. You can even hear someone saying that. $20,000, and you heard her say something about the history of this case. Yeah, the suspect, Joshua Jones, he has past felony convictions, and he had an active Department of Corrections warrant for his arrest at the time of the alleged crime. Kind of seems like relevant history. Now, when it comes to children being killed, she also weirdly goes easy on the accused. Just a few weeks ago out in Auburn, a couple, Joseph Knoer, K-N-O-E-R-R, and Megan Smith, they've been charged with manslaughter in the first degree after their 1-year-old son died from fentanyl and meth intoxication. The medical examiner's office, upon doing the autopsy, found some piece that he believes to be drug paraphernalia in the boy's intestinal system. Now, initially, at a first appearance, a judge set bail at $2 million. But then it gets in front of Judge Bender, who lowered the bail for Smith to $500,000 in electronic home monitoring. Remember the 18-year-old Chase Jones, who's accused of driving 112 miles per hour down a road in Renton, striking, T-boning a car, killing an adult and 3 children in the process? Remember that case? An 18-year-old who previously had been involved in 3 serious crashes within just the last year? Despite claiming a serious concern over his behavior and his potential future conduct, Judge Bender reduced his bail from $1 million to $100,000 in electronic home monitoring. This kid comes from a very wealthy family. They posted that bail very quickly. And why did she decide to make that decision? She said, well, Jones himself got injured in the car accident. That could preclude him from driving again. So, oh, okay. And it was the father of 2 of the children who died, who I thought said it perfectly. He said it to Como News. He said, while Chase Jones sits comfortably at home watching Netflix, the broken bodies of Matilda, Eloise, and Buster, 3 innocent children, lie side by side in fresh graves, never to return home to their families. While Chase Jones shares a meal at home with his loved ones, the body of Andrea Hudson lies in a freezer at the King County Medical Examiner's office, awaiting the day that her children, Nolan and Charlotte, will be well enough to attend her funeral. Judge Bender, yet again, sided with the suspect. And I've been following her for years because I went back and I found another story in which a guy was charged for allegedly not just shoplifting at the Nordstrom rack in downtown Seattle, but on video surveillance, assaulting the employee who tried to stop him, and then on the drive to jail after arrest, according to the police, he made multiple threats to kill the cops. Gets in front of this judge, Johanna Bender, someone who had a history with 2 warrants since 2021 and was, at the time he was arrested, on a bench warrant status. She said, I'm not going to set bail at all. I'm releasing him on his own personal recognizance, so long as he attends a community center for alternative programs. Oh, okay. You see, Judge Bender, and frankly other soft on crime judges, they say they're just doing their jobs. And oftentimes they say, well, our hands are tied. They point to various laws and rules. For example, Washington State Court Rule 3.2. And that presumes release for individuals on their own recognizance. You are supposed to have a presumption that you're going to release the person who's charged. And they say, this ties our hand. We can't do anything. It does say that. It also says explicitly, a judge can say no to a release if, quote, there is shown a likely danger that the accused will commit a violent crime. Now, dare I say, someone who's accused of murder in the second degree, it's in the title, murder, kind of violent, and might do it again. And then, of course, when you're setting the bail amounts, a judge has a ton of discretion. And what are they supposed to look at? Criminal history, the severity of the charges, the potential safety risk that this individual can pose to the public. And yet, doesn't really appreciate those 3 things, does she? And so, dare I say, the journalists out there who are listening, or maybe who read my piece over at KTTH.com, you would be wise to do what I'm doing, which is completely ignore her transparent attempt to use these alleged death threats to get out of any kind of media scrutiny, any kind of criticism. And sorry, I reject the whole idea that my criticism inspires someone to break the law. Anyone sending death threats that claims to be motivated by a journalist who's calling for tough on crime laws and judges that don't go easy on criminals, seems kind of hard to believe. Seems kind of hard to believe. Because anyone making a threat to a judge or anyone else, I hope you expect that you're going to get the exact same criticism and scrutiny I'm offering to judges like Johanna Bender. But I'm not going to stop criticizing her. When she makes a bad decision that puts my life on the line, my friends' lives on the line, I'm going to call it out. And of all the judges whose scolding of the media should be ignored, she's probably at the top of the list.